Serotonin is a molecule produced by the body that has an important role in many psychiatric conditions ranging from anxiety, depression, obsessive compulsive disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, PMDD, and more. There's a region in the brain that makes this molecule and it secretes it to other parts of the brain. It goes to the cortex, goes to the hippocampus, the learning areas of the brain. It goes to the cerebellum, which deals with fine motor movements. It also secretes down the spinal cord. So it has a variety of functions in the brain. But how many brain neurons do you think actually produce serotonin? Maybe like 1 in 10, 1 in 100. Actually, it's 1 in a million. So the brain has billions of neurons, but only 1 out of every million will actually produce serotonin. And actually, most of the serotonin is not produced by the brain. Only 2% of the serotonin in the body is in the brain. 80% of it, or most of it, is actually in the GI tract, in the GI system. So it functions there for like digestive stuff. Also, there's a small percentage that's on platelets, which deals with blood clotting. And there's another percentage that's in the immune system on the mast cells. But for the purpose of this video, we're really going to focus on how it affects the brain and mental health symptoms. And serotonin can have an important role in sleep, in mood, in concentration and attention. And it also can indirectly affect other neurons and transmitters in the brain. So first of all, serotonin is made from this starting point from an amino acid called tryptophan. And tryptophan is not produced by the body on its own, but it has to be ingested through the diet. And there are various nutritional aspects such as meat, dairy products, seeds that has tryptophan. And so then through a cascade of events, the body take the tryptophan and make it into serotonin. Along the way, it generates some molecules. You may have heard of 5-HTP, which is actually something you buy over the counter to perhaps bypass that step. So if you're not getting enough tryptophan from the diet, that may be one approach to try and do it, although there's still a lot of processes that the body naturally would go through to make serotonin. And there's many different types of serotonin receptors in the brain. Their abbreviation is a 5-HT, so there's a 1A, 5-HT1A, there's B, there's D, E, F. So there's a lot of different types of receptors on that. And then there's also the 5-HT2 receptors. And so some other types of medications like the antipsychotic drugs will interact on these 5-HT2 receptors and have effects there. So how do a lot of the SSRIs or selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor medications work? Well, serotonin, it's secreted from the brain and goes through different pathways. But in order to signal to the other, like to the receptor in the neuron and to fire these chemical signals, it has to bind to a receptor. And so this receptor has like these serotonin molecules in the middle of it or in between. But sometimes there's these other binding proteins or these particles that will actually take serotonin out and so prevent it from and like recycle it, and so it prevents it from binding onto the receptor. So what the medications do is sort of block that pathway. It's called selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. So it blocks the reuptake of the serotonin so it can increase the communication to the receptor and allow more for those signals and those neuron potentials to go to the rest of the brain and body. So that's really the function of these medications. And so some people think that maybe if they're on these medications for several years or several months, it doesn't work as well or it doesn't function as properly. Well, that's thought because perhaps these receptors are getting used to it. Or these receptors are filled with the serotonin molecule or those binding, and so there's not really any room more to have that binding process. There's just some theory, and it's hard to prove in actuality. But also I want to make a point here is that there's been shown to be other ways besides medications to increase serotonin in the body. Actually, there's some research that's been done that shows that spiritual and religious activities like meditation and prayer can increase serotonin in the body. So and as if you look into all the medical and biochemical pathways that are involved just to facilitate this communication, you see there's a lot involved there. It takes a lot of chance, a lot of faith, I think, for this thing to work. But I hope that gives some insight into what the role of serotonin is in mental health. It helps to keep the mind and body calm. Interestingly, they've found that people who have committed suicide, they've had low levels of serotonin detected in the cerebrospinal fluid. That is in the fluid in the spinal cord. If you have a difficult time keeping calm, have struggling with anxiety, with depression, with OCD, post-traumatic stress disorder, it could be related to serotonin levels. That's where a lot of these medications work. But as you can see here, there's also a lot of other factors that play a role in order for the medications to work properly. Be sure to like the video if you benefited from it and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already.